We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Lesley Mitchell-Clarke
and Wes Roberts,
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts.
Good morning, good afternoon, all of our wonderful viewers and listeners out there in virtual land, and welcome to another episode of Contact TV. And I am here with, as always, my partner in crime and co-host,
Wes Roberts. Hello.
And we are so excited because this is like a holiday. This is Christmas for me. This is a holiday treat because of all the wonderful, as Steve Martin used to say, brain droppings we're about to hear. But we are welcoming back to the program the wonderful Grant Cameron, certainly one of our foremost ufologists, researchers, and authors. And he speaks at a variety of events and conventions, and also has a very active group based in Winnipeg of the experiencers in that area, which is very important work. So we are thrilled to welcome back our dear friend, Grant Cameron. Grant, hello.
Hello.
Hey, Lesley and Wes, thank you for having me on. I appreciate your interest, and hopefully I've got some new stories that will add to your audience's understanding of what might be going on in the world.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. I'm actually so old that there are no all stories are new for me. There's no such thing as a rerun.
Yeah, which is what I tell people. That's one of the first lessons I tell people when I talk to them is I say, because a lot of people are new into the field, and I say, you got to realize, you think that what happens today happened in the past. It doesn't. You've got to realize this thing is changing as it goes along. It's like progressing. And everybody sort of thinks, well, you know, what happened today happened in 1975. And I'm with you. I was there like I always say, I was there, you know, a couple of years before Jesus became a carpenter. And I've been around to see it all.
You
Well, it
certainly
sounds like
have.
we're in a similar age group here, but that's about as much as I'll say.
Well, you know, Grant, this is, as we were chatting, you know, very briefly before we went live here. This has been a time of incredible upheaval. All kinds of stuff is happening globally, not only with the planet geologically, not only astronomically or astrologically even, but we've also had a global pandemic, something that we haven't seen for 100 years. And certainly we have been, you know, watching from Canada with bated breath as a person of dull normal intelligence and even less morality sat there defiling the Oval Office for 4 years. And was this something that do you think that these things are in some way connected? And I'm not a paranoid or conspiracy person, but do you think they're connected in some way? And can we choose to look at this as a kind of a culling, allowing us to see where the evil of ignorance and poverty and racism are?
Okay.
As an American, I would never have suspected that things of that horrible nature existed at this level at this day and age. It was a shocker to me, I'll tell you.
Okay, I'll give you my take on it. People may not. And it was backed up. We talked about downloads, and I'll get into it a little bit later. I actually had some downloads that dealt with this. So to me, I've had two major noetic experiences. One in 2012, which told me it's all got to do with consciousness. This is the answer to a question I had in 1975. I saw the second night, I saw this UFO flying away, and all I could think about was like, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It was just flying along. And I'm thinking like, I got to figure out what this is. I knew UFOs existed, so I've never been interested in sightings. So then I have the noetic experience in 2012, which basically said, you know what that was? You know, it's got to do with consciousness. That's where you got to go. Because I was doing the presidential stuff and I wasn't getting anywhere, and, you know, all the kind of stuff, your wheels are spinning. And then in 2017, I had a second noetic experience. I'm walking down a street in Winnipeg. It's actually very cold. And I get 24 things that come into my head in about 5 minutes. And I knew, because you get that noetic thing where you know And noetic is not just a good idea. Noetic is like Albert Einstein. When Albert Einstein had the dream of the toboggan going down the hill, that's where he got the theory of relativity. Everybody thinks he's a genius. No, he had this dream. And he said, I knew I had to understand that dream. In fact, you could say, and I would say, that my entire career was based on a meditation on that dream. So when you get noetic material, it's like you're talking to God. Like suddenly God talks to you and you go, oh, that's how it works. And it's like, and I knew to write this down. I started writing this stuff down. And they gave me 24 things. And the main one, there's two main ones. It basically said to me, not only have you got everything wrong about how you see the world, but it's exactly the opposite of what you think. So what the two main ones it gave me was, is the world made out of little nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world with certain rules and regulations. But if the world is made out of consciousness, which creates nuts and bolts, that's a completely different world and has completely different rules. And the other one is the one when you talk about the pandemic and what's happening in the United States. The second one they gave me is, and Deepak Chopra talks about a lot about this thing. And this is the idea, are things separate or is it all one thing? And it said, if it's separate, if it's just us bouncing around each other and, everything's random and stuff, that's one world. But if it's all one thing, then it's a whole different world. So I say that all that is evil, this is my expression, all that is evil that we would consider evil in the modern world is simply one thing. It is the mistaken belief in separation. So when you believe things are separate, that you and I are separate, and I'm the good guy, of course, I'm always the good guy, and you're the bad guy, then I can drop atomic bombs on and melt 100,000 people on the sidewalk. I can firebomb Tokyo and cremate 80,000 people in one night. I can kill 500,000 children in Iraq. I can put people in Guantanamo Bay and without trial or without convicting them or accusing them of anything, or trial for 20 years in solitary confinement. I can put kids in cages. That all comes from the mistaken belief in separation, that I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. And when you realize it's all one thing, that we're all together, we're all united, and we are all part of a bell. So that's what happened with the UFO thing. We rang the bell. We said, oh, nuclear weapons. We can detonate a nuclear weapon. It really doesn't matter. Don't tell me what to do. I can detonate this nuclear weapon. I need it or whatever. And we didn't realize that we are part of the bell. We're all connected. And that's why they came, because the whole bell, the entire universe rang, and they knew that the kids had got the matches. So it all comes down to this oneness. So I call the virus the Oneness Virus. And people will say, oh, it's the evil Chinese. I mean, they're dropping it on people. And even people here around me in Canada will say, and I say, listen, there are a number of countries in this world who have got it under control, who don't have any. Australia does not have a case now. New Zealand only had 25 deaths. Singapore has it under control. South Korea only had 250 or 300 deaths out of 51 million people. There are 6 areas in Canada that really do not have any COVID. They've got it under control. Yeah. So it's not what cards are dealt to you. It's how you play your cards. Mm-hmm. And so with the whole Oneness Virus is saying, you're all one thing. And people say, no, we're not. No, don't tell me I'm separate. I'm an individual and I'll do what I want. And what you will see is that the countries that got hammered by the virus are the countries where the individuals were held number one. The countries where the society, the one was more protected and you lost your individual rights until we got it under control, those countries were not affected. That applies to Canada, it applies to different places. So what I say is the virus is just simply telling you you're all one thing. And the analogy I always use is that we're in a situation where during World War II, when the Germans bombed to London, there was no radar. So in order for them to bomb London, they had to find the lights of London, and that's how they bombed London. And then so they had the lights off. So they said, turn all the lights off so the Germans can't find the city. And everybody turned the lights off. Today, we have a different thing. The individual is held high in modern society. And it's like, don't tell me to turn off the lights. If I want to turn on the lights, I'll turn on the lights. In fact, I'm going to turn on all the lights. I'm turning on the Christmas lights. Don't tell me what to do. And so it's this individual thing. And where you get the individual, and it's like the body or the brain. So the body is 85 trillion cells. And they all do their job. They all do exactly what they're supposed to do. And when a cell goes rogue and decides it's going to be an individual, I'm going to do what I want. Don't tell me not to divide. I'll do whatever I want. That's called a cancer cell. The same with the brain. It's 100 billion neurons that all work together to produce consciousness. A beehive, all the bees do exactly what they're supposed to do. And when the beehive gets damaged, they all just immediately go in. That's the whole idea. It's one. When you realize you're all one, you'll do the right thing. But when you get into the rape, pillage, kill, and steal, whoever's got the most toys when they die wins. That I'm an individual, and if I'm smart enough to chop the last tree down, don't tell me not to chop the last tree down. If I'm smart enough to get the last fish out of the sea, I will do it. Don't tell me what to do. And that's the situation we're in. And I'm doing a book that's finished. I don't know if I'll ever publish it. I did a book called Contact Modalities, where I look at different ways that people get in the field. If you know, because you work with experiencers, that a lot of experiencers, 40% according to the free survey, say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And so you go like, oh man, maybe we should listen to these people. Maybe they know something. So I did a book called Contact Modalities, where I look at 70 different modalities. So I look at hypnosis, I look at meditation, I look at dreaming, I look at drumming, dancing, reading tarot cards, all these different things. And I say they're all the same thing. They're ways to get into the field to pull the information out of the field. The one that I think is the most important, the one that may save the world, is psychedelics. So I realized this, and I had always tried various methods to get in the field. I'd had these noetic experiences, so I knew they were very important. I did a major study on psilocybin. I did 13 very high dose sessions with psilocybin. At one point during that thing, I was shown, and this goes back a number of months ago, I was shown the world, I was shown people dying. And basically it said to me, it's actually two experiences. The first one showed me the people dying from the virus, and it looked like a very normal process. The world is, there's birth, there's death. So the way we see the world is like death is evil. When you go into the world, death is not evil. There's a million cells die in your body every second. It's a natural process. It's birth, death, evolution. It just keeps progressing. Whereas we put the limits. So it showed me this, and it was very weird because I'm above the earth, I'm looking down, and it's showing me these people coming up, and it was just very natural. You could see sort of birth and whatever. And then it said to me in the second one, it said, very strange. It said, this is nothing personal, but a lot of people are about to die. And now you've seen in the situation in the United States, where remember when 9/11 happened and said, oh, it's just terrible. These evil Arab guys. I mean, how could you possibly do this? Like 3,000 people killed on the 9/11. We now have had in the last week, twice, more people die in one day from COVID in the United States than died in 9/11. And everybody goes, what's the big deal? We need to, some people got to die to get the economy going. Let's get the business going. We got to get some money. And the attitude has just changed. So to me, the virus is I call it the Oneness Virus. And it's basically telling you that you have to operate like a body where everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And when you get 80 trillion cells all doing whatever they want to do, you should not be surprised that the body gets sick. It's a natural process, and that's the way it works. And so all of it is lessons to me. And it's the whole idea that we go from one body to another, that we are spiritual beings in physical bodies to learn things. And that when you leave the earth, you only get asked one question. And the question is, how did it work out? Because all the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and their exits, and each man plays many roles. And you and I and all of us decided that we were going to do something when we came in the earth. It's not a random process. And when we leave, they say, you set it up, you arranged it, how did it work out? And most people say the same thing. Oh, I could have done better. So all we have to do is worry about what are we doing in the earth? Why did we come here? And what are we supposed to be doing? And are we doing it? And what everybody else does really doesn't matter. It's experience. So it's like the thing with the areas that have handled the COVID, it's not what cards are dealt to you. It's how do you play your cards? And everybody's trying to change the dealer. Oh, we need get the Chinese. They're dealing us bad cards, and we're talking to God. Start dealing us good cards, and we think that you're lucky based upon the cards. And no, it's how you react to it. And so that's my basic spiel on what's going on today. It all comes down. The main message is separation versus oneness. If you believe in separation, you're in a lot of trouble, and you have a lot of lessons to learn. But if you understand that the universe works on one, or psychedelic people who do ayahuasca, they say, As soon as they do it and have what's called a breakthrough, when they break through to the other side, they go, oh my God, I suddenly realized everything was alive, conscious, and everything was connected. And you'll see the same thing experiencers talking about, this whole same concept. The number one message, according to the free survey, was oneness and love. 54% of people say they were talked to by the beings about oneness and love. And that's this whole concept that we're into this world of materialism where we want more stuff, and we see aliens as nuts and bolts. We see it like we're going to grab those little bad guys, we're going to put them on reservations, and we're going to grab the engine out of their little flying saucer, and we're going to make lots of money on this. And that's the way we look at the thing, instead of seeing that this may be lessons to us in terms of what's going on. I mentioned before, and it just came in my head, I'll give it to you now. The Canadian government, most people don't know that the guy that ran the Canadian government program was Wilbert Brockhouse Smith. He was an experiencer, and he was a contactee, and for many years we never made it public. Because, as I said, most people don't realize that things have changed. In the 1970s, when I started, 1975 was my sighting, everybody firmly believed UFOs was a random event. You saw one UFO. If you saw one UFO, you were crazy. If you saw more than one UFO, they would lock you up. Nobody sees more than one UFO. It's a random event. And you just happen to be at the right place at the right time. So the idea that Wilbur Smith was having these contacts, and the alien that he was in contact with was by the name of AFA. And they actually channeled him at the CIA in 1959 through a medium or a contactee by the name of Francis Swan, who was doing this communication. Anyway, AFA had a contact with Wilbur Smith. And what AFA said was, we are here and we are not going to interfere. The only time we will ever interfere is if there's a nuclear exchange. And this is this concept that you've probably heard. They're not really here to save us. They're here to save the planet. That we are about to destroy the planet. So they said, we will step in if there's a nuclear exchange, and we can stop a nuclear exchange. And to prove that we could stop a nuclear exchange, AFA told Wilbur Smith, we could take the moon in front of the entire world, split it in half, and put it back together in front of the entire world to show you that we have the power to shut it down. Other than shutting down a nuclear exchange, we will do nothing. We will sit and watch the human race stew in its own juices. And that's the idea, that you cannot do your kids' homework for them. It's all about experience. Death is part of it. Life and death is part of it. And and in the end, it's very sad. But the way I was sort of shown it was, it really doesn't matter if we destroy ourselves. We've destroyed ourselves numerous times before, because I wrote a book on music. And the reason I got in was because the synchronicity that Neil Young was part of this whole thing about messages coming through music by aliens. And Neil Young grew up in Winnipeg. So I go, oh, really? He's involved. And he sang a song in the 1970s called After the Gold Rush. And the concept of the song is that we're treating the world like a gold rush. And when the gold is gone, it's going to become a ghost town. And the silver seeds, the flying saucers, are going to take the chosen to another planet. So even if we destroy the world, we're still going to learn the lessons. We're going to go someplace else. We're going to come back again. And you keep coming back until you learn something. And that's basically the thing. So it's this this thing that you and I are on the leading edge of. I think we are honored. I'm honored to play this game every day, that we are getting stuff that most people don't. We sort of realize what may actually be going on. Most people are living lives of quiet desperation. They haven't got the foggiest clue of what's going on. And so we have this onus on us that, as the Bible says, too much is given, much is expected. And that we are expected, because we've got this information. So when we get on the other side, we can't say, well, if it hadn't been for the dog eating my homework and my mother-in-law and Hillary Clinton and her emails, and they're going to go, time out. This is about you. You knew what was going on. You knew more than anybody else. And too much is given, much is expected. Or Edgar Casey said, knowledge not used as sin. So you and I, and especially when you're working with experiencers, which is what I say you got to do. Forget about the sightings in the sky. Forget about that sort of stuff.
I'm not interested in that.
Experiencers who are interacting with whatever the intelligence is. These people are interacting with it, and you can doubt them. You can give them lie detectors, do whatever you want. But when 40% say they knew the answer to everything in the universe, the same as near-death experience people say they knew the answer to everything in the universe at one point, why would you not talk to these people? Why are experiencers always totally ignored in exchange for trying to get the technology, which a lot of aliens have said, this is a trap. If you go down the technology road, this is a trap.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly indicative, the prime example of what you're talking about here, our obsession with physicality and dense physicality. And as you say, this may be something that is in our genome from our progenitors, and it doesn't matter because everything's happening all at once and we're in the now. And I do think you made an excellent point. In a way, this virus has been kind of the great leveler. And for many people, it is an incredible teaching situation.
Yeah.
And for many people, like I think the way we live in Canada, for me, it's been a reaffirmation of why I'm so proud to be Canadian. Because
Hmm.
despite the numbers we're having in Toronto, I know that our people are doing everything they've been asked to do
Mhm.
and more.
Mhm.
So, you're right. And it's interesting too, Grant, that the last big, I guess you would say, you could call it a pandemic,
Yeah.
the so-called Spanish influenza.
Yeah.
After that occurred, and that was at the end of the war, that was another great leveler like this. And in fact, I think a big barrage of social change occurred after that. After World War I and after the Spanish flu, people were woken up in maybe not as much as we would have liked them to be, but look what happened. Women's rights to vote, the first legislation, the first social programs, a lot of
Mhm.
firsts in the Victorian era and in the Edwardian era that we don't like to talk about. We just dismiss it. Well, it was primitive.
Yeah.
Not so. It
Yeah.
was another growth spurt. And maybe we're like, as a global unit, maybe we're like 12 now.
Yeah.
Maybe we're like
Yeah.
pre-adolescent, maybe we're like nasty tweens, whatever it is. Oh, Grant, let me ask you about this. Is so fascinating to me. Now, I'm going to just come out and say this. In my time in university, the drug of choice were psychedelics, mushrooms and psychedelics. I took a lot of that kind of stuff. And I wished God that I had had some type of epiphany or anything like the experiences. I mean, I was high as a bat and laughing and having fun, but do you think there also has to be maybe a readiness to go on that journey in order to get things out of it that you need to have?
Well, there's protocols. The reason I say that it's probably going to be the only thing that'll save the world is that it's now changed. Where you got a lot of research going on at Johns Hopkins University. They've actually got a whole institute there, NYU, London College, UCLA. That everybody suddenly realized that you can get 80% success ratio on smoking, uh, not depression that you can't treat, 80% success ratio after 6 months. So a lot of that, but you need the protocol. So it's not just that you take it and you wander around with it. They have very set protocols, which is
I
what I was
see.
using, which is called the John
I
Hopkins
see.
protocols. So you
Okay.
use an eye shade so you don't it's darked out. You use they have a set playlist that you and so the playlist leads you through, and it has different types of songs that will sort of reminiscent songs, so your mind will go there, and it basically is just opening the gateway. So there's a lot of research now going, and the important part is not just the sort of the cures that they're finding for like people who are dying of cancer, who completely are okay once they have the experience, is the fact that it comes with this oneness thing, that there's what's called the seven states, the seven mystical things that you have. These people are experiencing these mystical states. So when I started it, I'd never done any sort of drug ever, and the only reason I did it was because I had tried hypnosis, I tried meditation. I was using it as daydreaming. That's how I had my noetic experiences. So I knew this is very important. And when I started to study the noetic experiences, I realized, like, oh, Paul McCartney got yesterday in a dream. John Lennon said it was like channeling. That's how they got their songs. And I go, this is pretty cool. I got to get this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I did it, because I tried lucid dreaming. I couldn't do the lucid dreaming. And when it came to the psychedelics, I said, okay, I'll try this. So I did the first one, and I got a lesson. So the way you go into it is you say, okay, I'm here. I call it, the book is called psilocybin, psilocybin, a breakthrough the psilocybin school. So when I went in, I said, okay, I'm ready for whatever it is. I want to learn something. I want a breakthrough. I want a noetic experience where I'm going to, like when I was walking down the street and I got that stuff. It's exactly what I got. My first one was on compassion, and I saw what we were talking about at the beginning. I was a woman on the Mediterranean as she drowns, as this refugee trying to get away, and the big sea, and she's grabbing her 2 kids, and the waves are coming over, and then she suddenly realizes I'm her, and suddenly I realized, like, I'm not going to make it. We have this promised land. We're going to the promise. We not only are we not going to make it, we're about to drown. And I'm with her, and I experienced this, and then I experienced the kid in the cage because I was on the U.S. border and I saw one of these families coming across the U.S. border just before they started the lockdown with the kids. And I saw this kid, this family. There was a young boy about 7, a girl who was about 10 years old, who only had one arm, and she's bouncing a ball and she's playing with her brother. And this is part of the experience. So I saw her at the border when I came across. And I'm thinking, like, how could she be a threat to Donald Trump and the United States? She's got one arm. Like, come on. She's got, like, this little kid and the family, and they were completely from El Salvador. And when I had the experience, I was in the cage with this kid, and he was just looking up at me, and I'm looking at this kid, and he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and it was sort of like, why don't you say something? And I was devastated. I was crying, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I knew, because I had seen these people coming across the border, and I had not done anything. And so now I'm very much more outspoken about, having concentration camps in a country and doing stuff like that. And so that was the first experience. And then, so I said, okay, I'll do it again. And I did it again. And the second one was on grief and despair. The whole thing was about grief and despair. The third was about death. And that's when I had the COVID thing, where I had 6 different events. I'm in a coffin. I'm in a coffin. And I'm there, and I'm not freaked out or whatever, and it goes through these different events. So I've had 13 experiences, and I have 13 lessons. So it's like I go to school, and I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the lesson tonight? What's the lesson? And it's that kind of thing where it's what your intention is, what you bring into it is what you get. So that's almost like the near-death experience thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I've had the events. In fact, 1-2 times ago, I had the hell experience. I was saying, come on, you're manifesting this stuff, whatever you have. And I had the experience where I'm in what I would call a hell experience. And so the whole idea, when I figured it out, what it was, it's almost like the near-death experience thing when you try to control it. So I'm doing a meditation. Instead of using the music, I changed. So I'm going to do the meditation. I'm doing meditation. And it's got out of control. These things were coming, they're whizzing by me and whatever. And it wasn't that they were doing anything to me. It was just very annoying. And then I tried to control it. And that's the whole thing, is when you try to control it, the ego takes over, and then you're in trouble. Then you go down the rat hole. The whole idea behind the thing is surrender. You have to surrender. And if you surrender, that's the same thing they talk about near-death experience people who have the negative experience. They're people who are trying to control the experience. They won't let go. And that's the whole thing. So when you let go, and I realized these things you got to learn, and that you can have the hell experience. And then as soon as I let go, as soon as I said, okay, I guess this is for the next 4 hours, I'm going to be with these stupid things flying around here, or for the rest of eternity. And once I said that, I may be with this for the rest of eternity. I bought this, own it. You did this. You own this experience. Don't blame Hillary. Don't blame the dog. Don't blame the mother-in-law. You did this. As soon as I did that, boom, it was gone. And suddenly I was in a state which I say has to be heaven. It was like blissful state, oneness, unconditional love, which you'll hear about people talking about with the beings where they feel the unconditional love.
Yeah.
The first time I felt that, and I always said with lucid dreaming, I said, if I ever learn to lucid dream, the first question I'm going to ask, because in lucid dream, you can do the same thing. You can ask a question and you will get an answer. It may come in a little play. You're in a little play and you got to figure out what's going on or whatever. But I said, the first question I would ask is, I want to experience unconditional love, because I'd heard so much about people in near-death experience, in abduction experiences, talking about this unconditional love. I felt it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I got to record this." And I'm trying to record. What does it feel like? What's the emotion like? This bliss. And so I've had these what are called these mystical states where people will describe it, and I will say absolutely, it is equivalent to the birth of a son, which I had, and the death of a parent, which I had. It is equivalent. It is the most unbelievable thing that you'll ever experience. And I think it's like 70% of people who had John Hopkins And it's very controlled there. They have doctors on call and all this kind of stuff. They have two control people in the room. 70% of people say it was one of the top 5 experiences of their life. And so that's where I'm
Wow.
saying, but the thing is so important is it comes with this oneness thing, that not only are you getting these medical breakthroughs, everybody that's doing it realizes this thing about the mystical experience, that these people are having and when they have the mystical experience, that's when they get healed. And that's when all the stuff takes place. And then they start recording these mystical experiences, which is what you see crossover with modalities, that a lot of people will have these download experiences that I had. They'll encounter beings like for example, if you ever followed the DMT stuff with the experiment, Rick Strassman started. It's called the spirit molecule. So Rick Strassman had a DMT experience where these little beings come out of a waterfall made of a flaming waterfall, and they say, "Now you see, now you see, now you see." And they're basically saying, "Okay, now go do something. You've seen it now." And he starts this experiment at the University of New Mexico, and 50% of all people inside the DMT experience encounter beings. 25% of them are on a table getting examined. And he would be asking these people, have you been abducted? And they go, "No, I don't think so." And then he kept it secret for many years. He kept this thing secret that all these people are seeing these beings. And it still bothers him, because these people are on a table. They are not on a ship. They're on a table, and they're having this experience. And that's where I get this thing with the crossovers. I did the modality thing, and you start seeing these crossovers with modalities or with experiencers. I have an experiencer in Utah who said that his being is called LB. And at the end, he suddenly realized LB may be his son. This is a genetic thing. And this is the being that leads him through most of his experiences from the 1970s. And he gets taken to the spirit world. And I said, and he's a real strong Mormon guy. And his mother is there, and she's taking him to this building. She said, "Ron, when you die," he's got very advanced heart condition. "Ron, when you die, you're going to come here and you're going to have a room in this building." And he said, then my mother takes me into the building, and he said, "I go inside, it's 10 times the size inside as it is outside." And I went, "Hey, that's what Chris Bledsoe said about the flying saucer. That's what Terry Lovelace said about the flying saucer." And it's like, is he having a flying saucer experience, or is he having and you see this crossover? Or he talks about his mother takes him down, and you probably have had these, where he takes him down, and she said, when you get over here, there's these crystals coming out of a table. And these crystals you look into the crystal at a certain angle, and you can see your whole life. You can see your past lives.
Yeah.
That's the same as Michael Newton. People talking about the life between lives, so they see the crystal. Or in UFO Cover Up Live, 1988, the documentary that Reagan, I believe, leaked stuff into the UFO community. 1988, they said that the guy that was the UFO guy, the Falcon guy, said the most amazing thing he saw, this is 1988, the most amazing thing I saw the whole time was the aliens had a crystal. And they could show the crucifixion of Jesus. They could show Jesus' Sermon on the Mount by looking into this crystal. And I'm going, it's the same thing. You see these crossovers, and you start realizing it may all be the same thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Lesley.
Go ahead, Wes. Go ahead.
Just before we leave the topic of the pandemic, the virus, I've read some stuff which I believe that a virus, an individual piece of it or cell of it, has some degree of intelligence or purpose. So how does that fit into the oneness that we've been talking about?
Well, the cells all cells are just doing their own thing. So we have consciousness, and we think ours is the only consciousness, but cells are communicating with other cells all the time. That's how they operate. So the virus is only doing what it's meant to do. And so it's just, and I say, like, it must get up every morning and say, thank you, Jesus, praise God. I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, it's just doing its job. That's the idea. It's like when you get into reincarnation, the good evil thing, and it's just all experience. So this is part of its process. The same as a cell in your body will die, or you will die of some sort of virus thing. All these things are built into the system. So it's not like there's us and then there's the bad virus. It's just the same as everything else. And that death and decay and all this kind of stuff is part of the process. We want a world where it's all, ice cream and good stuff and take
Mhm.
away the bad stuff. And why don't the aliens come down and rescue us and all this kind of stuff? We're looking for the good life with the big house and 2 cars, and then we want some alien entertainment on the side, and we want to go to other planets and stuff. And yet it's just a process of experience. So if you have the virus, and I've had 2 friends die of the virus. In fact, one very prominent experiencer in Winnipeg who just died last month of the virus. And he was an expert on orbs. He was photographing orbs in his bedroom. He was one of the guys that he had, I don't know if you've ever seen the video that he had. He had the video of the thing that heals him. And he had positive experiences and negative experiences with the thing. But he had this one where he films it, where this orb comes. He's got cancer and he's about to get the operation. He's got this big tumor on his neck and he's praying. I said, "Were you actually praying?" He said, "Yeah, I was asking for help." And this orb comes down. It comes down the wall. It's a little tiny thing, goes into his clothes, comes out, and this blue orb comes above him and goes into his body. And then he goes, he's all excited. He goes to the bathroom, and the tumor's gone on the back of his neck. And he tells the oncologist, and the oncologist said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, I think it happened. It just disappeared." And the oncologist said, "It doesn't just disappear. What do you mean? It doesn't disappear." And he said, "Oh, I think it went away Saturday night." and he had experiences where they put the shirt on inside out and backwards. And he'd ask, like, why are they doing that? And I said, it's the theory. It's what I call the theory of wow. They just want you to know, no, it's not a dream. No, this is real. That's why they put he had triangles on his body. And he actually had one on his head where it was a real sort of ugly thing. They cut a Y into the top of his head. And he got up in the middle of the night and there's blood all over his hands. And he goes into the bathroom and he goes, "What is going on?" He's looking, and he takes the mirror and he looks at this thing, and there's this Y cutting his. And he said, "Why would they do that to me? Why would they do that to me?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe they were trying to get your attention and they couldn't get your attention. So they said, let's give him something he's really not going to forget." Because at that point, then he knew this is for real. So he was dealing with something. And he had these very bizarre experiences. He had these orbs. He would go like this, and these orbs are flying around his room, and he's filming all this. He had 5 terabytes of video material. And then he died. He's very much against the virus thing. He's protesting against Trump's treatment of it and stuff like that. And then he ends up dying of it. It was kind of bizarre, but it's all experience. So whatever happens to us, we want to turn. These are good things. These are bad experiences. It's all just experience. It's whatever cards are dealt to you, how you play the cards. So you may have chosen. It's like you see in the reincarnation world with the Michael Newton stuff. The biggest lineup to get in the earth is the handicap lineup. That everybody, or these near-death experience. The one woman was a bombing thing in Iraq, where she's with her spirit guide above the truck where she was bombed, and then they're laughing and they're trying to decide what kind of injuries should you have. Oh, let's have this and that, and she picks all these different injuries that she's going to have when she comes back out of it. And people, that doesn't make any sense to people because we want good stuff. We're used to living in a world where everything works for us. And what you got to realize is everybody's going to be the kid in the cage. Everybody's going to die of starvation. We don't get to be the rich white guy every time. We will learn lessons, and that whatever bothers, I always warn people, whatever bothers you the most in life, whether it's blacks or natives or whatever it is, or gay people or whatever, get ready. Guess what you're coming back as. Think about it before you die. Because you're going to get on the other side and you're going to go, "Oh, I should have had empathy and I should have had understanding." I'm going to choose to come back as that, to learn empathy and understanding. So to me, it's always this thing about it's all experience. There is no real good and bad. It's how we play, how we learn it. And you usually you learn most from the things that go bad. You really, when things are going well, you go, "Oh, I'm so smart." The ego is just taking it in. "Hey, I got this all under control." It's not until you get sort of leveled by something that you, as you pointed out, that's when all these sort of the evolution of the world takes place, when you get hammered down by something and you have to learn how to deal with it. Although this time I'm not too sure whether we're going to get out of it, because if you see the situation in the United States, it's complete separation. It's me versus you, the Democrats versus the Republicans, and it is not slowing down. It is actually picking up in pace. And you have a situation where you may have a civil war, but it's all separation. It's believing that I'm the right and you're wrong, and I'm not going to back down. And everybody goes farther in the corner. Or even with the thing where I always warn people about trying to convert people in the UFO field, is that I've got the Stanton Friedman files, and I've been there to collect his files and look at his files. And he worked on it for 61 years. And he argued with all the major skeptics, Klaas and
Mm.
Oberg and Menzel and all these guys. And he would always say, I had a debate at Oxford, and 78% of the people believed I won the debate. But if you look at the actual correspondence between these people, nobody convinced anybody of anything. Everybody just walked farther into their corner. So that's where it comes down to. It comes down to, what am I here on earth to do? What am I supposed to be doing? And we have to try to stop converting the people who aren't going to be converted, and learn from the experience. And every experience gives us a lesson, and we can learn from it.
Thank you
Wow,
for shining
absolutely
lights.
wonderful, Grant. And I must say, you brought up something very interesting that I did want to mention for just a moment, that, and Wes and I have discussed this many times. It is not unusual when I do a sort of life between life. I am not a direct student of Michael Newton, but my teacher, Georgina Cannon, was. So I do the real Newtonian method. And when we get people before their council, which is an experience of commonality, there are, Newton discovered there are these nodules, these points that sort of have to happen. They happen differently, symbolically differently, whatever, but there's a council. And I started seeing, or my people, when I say seeing, I was empathizing, but my people I was regressing started reporting to me that they had members on their councils that were not human. And describing, well, there's a being with a very elongated skull, and there's a being over here that looks Asian, but not really. And usually it's within what we would call the basic, prototype, the 2 arms, 2 legs, face, not too wild, not like an amorphous blob or whatever. But I think, as above, so below. I also think that there are evolved beings who sit on councils who aren't physically dead, in the sense that we think of it, that they're made of lighter matter, and they are able to absolutely either project themselves onto crafts without folding space, just projecting themselves there, and they're also able to sit on councils and still be living a physical life by their definition.
Yeah, and you would have the experience as well of a lot of people. Patti Smith was one. John Denver was another. John Denver, 54 million albums, who believed that they weren't from here. We're from somewhere else. Like John Denver believed he was from the constellation Lyra. And he wrote a song called Spirit, which was released after his death, which talked about the star systems. And so it comes to the idea that you may have been a gray in the past lifetime, and that you made an agreement. Or I always ask, people who do regressions, if you regress the person back and you say, at any point did you agree to be in this situation? Because we always say, oh, the poor victim, they got abducted. And then you regress them. I remember asking Kathy Martin, I said, Kathy, what do you think about this? And she said, I used to wonder about that. So I actually had myself regressed, and I actually heard the words come out of my mouth. I agreed to this. And that's what this thing about the psychedelic experience is. You have to own it. If you are a victim, you are in a lot of trouble. But when you start to own it and realize that maybe you had part of it, or even like the Michael Newton thing, where the concept that people have split souls, that they live 2 lives at the same time. You may be the actual being that's abducting yourself. You may be both sides. And that's this connection you see with people that they say, no, this is not my family. That's my family. I feel this connection to this thing. And that's where this idea, we want to do the separation thing. There's us, and then there's these aliens that should just give us their technology and get the hell out of here. And we don't realize that there's this connection, that we are all playing on the same field. And like Michael Newton says, it's like, okay, you played this role, or the idea of karma. When it really gets bizarre, where people sort of really leave the ship, where it says, karma, you kill somebody in next life, you're going to get killed. Well, somebody has to volunteer to do that. And when people hear that, they go, no, it's not going on. And this is this idea that it's all like this play, this role playing, that consciousness is one thing, and that it comes in, it takes a physical presence in order to experience itself, and that it's all one thing. Or as this thing is, you've got to go back and realize, who am I really? Are you the ego? Are you the person, or are you the person who's watching the ego? And we always have to remember, we always get in the psychedelic. I had the experience where it was so real to me. It was like you actually start to believe you're the character on the stage. That's how well reality works. And you are not the character on the stage. You are the person. You are as they say, you are the silence between your words. You are watching. You are on the outside. You are one. And that's where I look at the technology, because I've done for many years. I looked at government and I looked at the highest level people, intelligence, government people, military people, and I'm trying to figure out what do they really have in terms of technology. And what I have come to conclude is that I don't think they have any anti-gravity technology, because you can take Joe Firmage, who's spent tens of millions of dollars trying to levitate an object off a table, and he couldn't do it after tens of millions of dollars. And I'm thinking, this is weird. I mean, he could just buy it from the black ops people. But when you look at the technology, every time that I check portal technology and I followed it to the end, it seemed to occur to me that, yeah, they may have this. I'll give you one example.
They have it, I think.
There's a guy who's, his name is, you call him Tyler D. He's in, if you've ever interviewed Diane Pasolka. That's the main character. I met this guy in 2013 in a cottage in Pennsylvania, and he was dealing with experiencers. And that's why I say, this is what you got to do. And he knew it. He had experiencers, and they would be writing down for him all their premonitions, all the things that were happening. He was studying them because he's an experiencer himself. He gets downloads. He's got 40 different patents that he got from the beings. He told me, he said, that idea? And he sold a company for millions and millions and millions of dollars. And he had an idea that came in his head. Diane Pasolka talks about it in the book. And he said to me, they put it on the space shuttle, and he patented it, and he made lots of money on this thing. And he said, Grant, the last thing I remember, that idea came into my head when I woke up in the morning. He said, the last thing I remember the night before was a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. And I said, oh, really? Could you see its face? And he goes, no, I couldn't see its face. And I said, well, you should go to Yvonne Smith. You go to LA all the time. You should go to Yvonne Smith. You should be regressed. You should go back and find out what it was about. But he does this process of this download thing that he gets these downloads. Same as Gary Nolan that's doing the DNA stuff. He gets the downloads. He knows how this thing works. And so at one point during the experience, he's telling me about these, and he actually put me in contact with an experiencer who used to live where I live in Manitoba, and she now lives in Florida. So he did that, and then he pulls out his cell phone, and he says, what do you think of this? And he shows me this photograph. It's a painting of these two guys, and they're flying through space, like in their pajamas, and they're flying through space, and I'm looking at them and going, I don't know. And then he shows me the next one, and all these paintings of space, of eclipses, these balls going all into the middle. And he keeps showing me this photo. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And then he shows me this 56 Chevy on top of a parkade. And he says, what's in the back seat? Take a look. Do you see that postcard there? And I'm looking, and you can just sort of see the postcard. And he said, on the postcard, it said it was a boy writing to his girlfriend or vice versa, and said, I wish I could travel through space to be with you. And I go, really? That's what it said? And then he says, you know where that is? Or he said, what do you think? And I said, I have no idea. I have no idea about these, whatever you're showing me. And he said, you know where it is? And I said, no, where is it? He said, it's a Hughes aircraft building. And I go, still don't know what you're talking about, Tyler. I have no idea. And he said, oh, that's where the jump room was. I went, what? And that's the CIA jump room with the Barack Obama story. And he said, he said, the one with the two guys flying through space is outside the elevator. And I said, really? So the first time I went to LAX, it's the first place I went. It's 999 Sepulveda Avenue. It's been turned into an office building. And the thing was, I thought later, it was like years later, I'm thinking, why did he show me those photos? Because he didn't say this is real. He didn't say it wasn't real. He just, what do you think of it? And he was sort of giving me the little hint that he'd been there. And so he must have believed part of the story. And that's what I think. And that's the whole idea of oneness. They aren't flying through time and space in big ships with thousands of years worth of food. They're popping in and popping out. Or as Jim Peniston, if you ever heard the story, Jim Peniston, they come to get his DNA. They're studying Kit Green, and the Defense Department is studying experiencers, and they're studying their MRIs and their DNA. And they go to Peniston. They got it from Burroughs. They went to Peniston, and they say, we'll give you a full disability for your injury. And he said it wasn't injured. And he said, well, we'll give you full disability anyway. And he said, you're not going to roll over like Burroughs. I'm not giving you this stuff. You tell me what you're doing. What are you doing? And Kit Green, who was the CIA guy who ran the Weir desk, said, well, it's kind of propulsion. He said, it's not propulsion. Come on. It's not propulsion. You think I'm stupid? He said, what are you? And he said, well, maybe I'm using the wrong word. Kit Green says this. We're trying to figure out how does the phenomena pop out and pop in just as quickly. That's portal technology. That is oneness. That's understanding that it's all one thing, which is part of my 2012 download experience, where three ideas came into my head. And one of the things that came into my head was Jan Harzen, 1993, when he's talking to Ben Rich, who ran Lockheed Skunk Works, is always rumored to be the back engineering of the flying saucer stuff. And he said, Ben, Ben, I need to know. I had this experience when I was 9 years old with a flying saucer in the backyard with my brother, and I need to know. I wanted to build a flying saucer. How do they get here, Ben? How does it work? How does the propulsion system work? And Ben turns around and says exactly what Dr. Eric Walker had told us 2 years before from Penn State University. He said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And so Jan Hartson says, oh, it means everything in time and space is connected? And he said, that's how it works. Walks out of the room. Yeah. Tom DeLong was talked to the head scientist at Lockheed Skunk Works. When he heard the consciousness, the head scientist said, now you're talking, and it's all he wanted to talk about. It's all consciousness. There is no nuts and bolts. The physical world is a creation inside consciousness. The aliens know that. That's how they get here. They can move from here to there. And in this world, you have the ghosts, you have the spirits, you have the aliens, and they're just in a higher vibrating thing. And that we can get into it. And that's why you got to listen to the experiencers, because they have, maybe not on their own, but they are in the field. And you can ask them questions like, okay, so how does this work? How does that work? And you start to learn stuff. Or as Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem using the same material that you used to create the problem, which means you need something to come in from the outside. That one of the experiences, downloads I had, it called them wrong blocks. You've got a bunch of wrong blocks and you're shuffling them. Or as William James, the head of the guy that created American psychology, said, you think that you're thinking, you're actually just rearranging your prejudices. So what we've got is we've got these ideas that we have. And we keep rearranging these blocks around and around, and we're not getting anywhere. You need something from the outside. You need Christopher Columbus to sail over the ocean and say, no, the world ain't flat. No, I was there. And when you bring in the new information, and that's what experiencers are bringing, they're bringing new information. And as long as you don't listen to the experiences and you just ravel the sightings, how many sightings, how many red ones, how many green ones, you revolve all this stuff, you're never going to get anywhere. You've got to bring in new information, as Einstein said. You cannot solve a problem using the same information you used to create the problem. Experiencers bring the new information, and people got to start listening to the experiencers and what they're saying and catalog that, and not the UFO. UFOs are real. Let's get over it. They're just sightings. And all the UFOs is just, I call it the theory of wow. Like foreign planet. They get the kids and they say, we got this culture that's about to destroy itself. How should we get their attention? And the little grade 1 kid says, oh, fly these things around and put lights on them. And they go, well, that's a good idea. So that's why UFOs have lights on them. We don't have lights on our craft. They have lights. You can see them. They want you to see them. They want you to go, what is going on here? And that's why they have the paranormal stuff. That's why they do the paranormal stuff, is because if it's not weird, you're not going to remember it, and you're not going to retell the story. So they do this weird stuff, and they make it really weird. So you go, oh, you want to hear this story? You're never going to believe what happened to me last year. And it's like gay rights. It's like African American rights. It's like anything else. The more you talk about it, doesn't have to be good or bad. The more you talk about it, the more the consciousness rises. And eventually everybody's going to make the right decisions. That's what happened in 2017 when the New York Times did the article. I remember years ago, we used to think, oh, when they released the fact that the government was actually studying this stuff, there are UFOs, people are going to jump off bridges, the stock market's going to melt down, religions are all going to collapse. What happened when they did the New York Times article? Absolutely nothing. Everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. Come on. Yeah. Well, give me something new. I knew that already. And that's what they're doing. This is a acclimatization thing that the beings are doing. They're doing this acclimatization thing, that they're gradually leaking the stuff out, and the experiences are carrying the message. More and more experiences coming forward. The veil is getting thinner and thinner. More people, and in the end, when it's going to come, like the person was abducted and they had these experiences or whatever, everybody's going to go, yeah, I knew that. Come on, tell me something new. I knew that already. And that's what's going to happen. That's what they're doing. And yet the underlying message is always going to be this oneness message, that you've got it wrong. If you think it's a material world, you absolutely have got it wrong. Yeah. The beings, these spirits, all these people on the higher vibrating things know the principle of oneness. That's how they get in. That's how they get out. Yeah. And we're stuck in a world of separation where we believe there's object and subject split, and there is no split. When you realize that, you can start to understand, but you've got to go to the people who are dealing with the phenomena. It's the only chance we've got to figure this thing out.
Yeah, brilliant, Grant. And lots of information is coming down that completely is in alignment with what you are saying. Mm-hmm. It is consciousness that drives the physical, not the other way around. And you know, from the research that's being done by yourself and so many other wonderful people, and just look at the amount of television I mean, mainstream television that deals with this subject matter. When I was a kid growing up, we had the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
You know, and then God, Star Trek came, and my little skull blew off. You know, so we didn't have we were all thinking that way as kids, or at least I was, but you know, we didn't have what the resources. So the media is a reflection of what people are thinking about. So I would say during this holiday time, I think we need to all open up our minds to the concept of oneness
And share and
and
it.
share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kindness and oneness, same thing. This is why we develop compassion. This is why we have multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
Exactly as you say.
Yeah. And we have to realize the important role we have. I actually got message from, I don't know if you know, if you've ever interviewed, no, she doesn't do interviews, Angela Joyner, who broke the Stevensville, Texas story. And she lost her job. She got fired, and she never worked as a reporter again full time. She had a real tough go of it for what happened to her. She broke one of the biggest UFO stories of all time. So she's famous for it, and she's actually now in a hospital with COVID, and her husband's in ICU with COVID
my God.
in Texas. And so she's struggling to stay alive. And I used to lecture about her all the time because I always realized the fact that she had given up her life. She had given up her job to move this issue down the road. And I used to say in lectures, I said, Angela, you may have lost your job, and it may have been a real bad life after this happened. But let me remind you that 500 years from now, when your grandchild's grandchild start talking, and everybody realizes this was for real, and we were at the beginning of this, they're going to say, Angela Joyner was my relative, and I'm proud of her. And that's what we've got to realize, that we are like at the time of Christ. We are at the time of the signing of the Constitution. We are here in this very important thing. And if we realize how important this is, it is our job to sort of get it out. And I thank God every day I got to play this game. I mean, I look at people around me, like people will think that you're crazy. You go to a cocktail party and you listen to people talking, and it's basically like, Lesley, can you tell me about your kids? Any of your kids in jail? Anybody? Because they want a story for the next cocktail party. So they say, you know, Lesley's kid, you know, I heard the story. And you're talking about people who aren't in the room. And so when they think you're crazy, and then I'm listening to these conversations and I'm going, you people think I'm crazy? Like, can you listen to yourself what you're talking about? You're talking about nothing. You're talking about other people who aren't even here.
Plenty of it. Plenty of nothing. So
they
Grant,
got plenty of nothing. Nothing's plenty for them.
Just doing a little housekeeping. Sorry, Lesley. We're up to about our normal time limit. So I'm hoping that Grant can share with our viewers how folks can get a hold of him, and we can talk about the next show.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, most of my stuff that happens, I put on my Presidential UFO Facebook. And I do a lot of interviews with experiencers, with near-death experience. I just actually interviewed Eben Alexander, which was a highlight.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow.
And so I put that on my White House UFO YouTube channel. And I have a lot of interviews. We're doing a series right now on the connection between music, art, and UFOs. And what you find out is all these artists, we put it up, and we got swamped with artists. Unbelievable. People have said, I had my UFO experience, and I had to go out and get paints, and I started painting. Yep. And you have the aerial school girl that was painting. We're doing a whole series of people with art, music, and it's very interesting stuff. So most of the stuff I do is not much UFOs anymore. It's more the consciousness thing. It's these weird aspects, which I think is what you got to do. So White House UFO YouTube and Presidential UFO Facebook.
Great. Thank you.
Fabulous. All right. And so, Wes, we're hoping that this is part 1 of 2. Maybe,
gosh,
and I'm hoping maybe, Grant, that you can come back, because we really didn't have time to get into this, but I think it's important. I would love to hear your observations about, you know, what's going to happen in the Biden administration, what you think, what your projections are, and we'll have a chance to maybe explore some of that and some other cool consciousness stuff as well.
Yeah, we should do that because there has been a lot of discussion. Obama made a statement. Biden. I can tell you what Biden has said in the past. I have some material, so we'll do that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And Grant, I want you to have an absolutely wonderful Winnipeg Christmas. Don't eat too many pierogies, although it's tempting. It's tempting. John Candy used to have them flown in from wherever he was in the world, the famous Winnipeg pierogi. And we are going to see you after the new inauguration of the new administration, and we'll talk about it. And I just want to say, I believe that you, like Wes and myself, we are midwives of disclosure.
Mhm.
We are midwives of the coming era that is going to be breathtaking. I believe that.
It was,
All right.
it was an honor to talk to you. You have information that I need and that the world needs. Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
thank
Grant. Fabulous holiday. Happy New Year. And we'll see you in January. Okay.
Bye for now, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you for watching Contact TV.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors, Lightwork Hypnosis, UFOria and the UFOria Chronicles, Earth Mystery News, Conspiracy Culture Books, MUFON Canada, Free Experiencers, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and Variety Store Productions.
For guest booking information, please email Wes Roberts at producer@contacttv.ca. And don't forget to join us on Facebook and Twitter.